I will now call this meeting to order. All trustees are present. Welcome. This meeting is being webcast live and recorded. The recording or webcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. The following topics have been identified for closed session: public employment appointment, personnel matters. Public comment on closed session items. And we'll adjourn for closed session at 5:30. We will now convene to the regular session at 6:13 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board met in closed session to discuss board deliberation regarding public employment of the chief business officer. The board voted unanimously to appoint Danielle Alvarez to position of chief business officer. Approve the August 28th, 2024 regular meeting agenda. A motion to approve. Any discussion? Roll call. Valerie. Aye. Teresa. Aye. Sammy.
Aye.
Patty. Aye. And Patty. Reports. Superintendent report.
Yes, good evening, Board President Delafuente, members of the board, staff, and community.
We have officially completed 2 weeks of school. It goes by really fast, right? We were just thinking that 2 weeks ago we were here and it was the first day. Again, I want to thank our students, family, staff, and community for all pitching in to ensure that our students have an amazing experience. Our students are our primary focus. It was awesome to experience my first Corcoran High School Panthers football game. And the stadium is truly a place on Friday nights to be here in Corcoran. I was able to connect with students and families with my first sideline chat with the superintendent. I'll be at each home game with a different topic. So last week we talked about volunteers. We'll send out the survey to families and anybody else to kind of get to see how can we improve volunteers in our district, right? As your priority 3 that you have established. And then you also find me at other sports, including volleyball, basketball, baseball, swim. I might even set up at the tennis court. So who knows, right? So just if you see me there, come by, say hi. I want to make sure that I hear from our community as we make important decisions. And what was also great was to see our student athletes be professional. And that's not always the case these days, right? As we see in the news. And so what was awesome was I was there on the sideline, not only at the football game, but I was there at the volleyball game as well. And our students are class acts, but also our coaches. And so when you get a chance to go to a game, look at both sides of the court or both sides of the field, and you see a big difference. And so I just want to commend our coaches. I want to commend our high school and middle school staffs for really just leaning into, it's about, showing professionalism first. So I want to thank you for that. In addition to all those things, when you're at the game, especially football, I mean, amazing food, tri-tip sandwiches, candy, all this other stuff. So, definitely appreciated that. Big kudos to our sites who hosted some amazing back to school nights. There were tacos, music, great resources from our Rotary and Kiwanis clubs and more. I believe that was the first time that we actually had our service organizations at a back to school night in a while. And so it was great to see that connection, because in order for us to really have our students advance and become successful, it takes the entire village of Corcoran, right? It's not just going to be teachers or even the district, but it's everybody. And so I want to thank our principals and our staff who did a really amazing job there. Most importantly, our families were able to connect with their teachers, and that was important. Our board's priority 3 calls for meaningful engagement with schools and families, and back to school night was a great example. I could spend all night bragging about the many wonderful moments being created at our schools today, but for now, that's it. I yield my time, Madam President.
Thank you. Board of Trustees.
I attended the high school back to school night. It was a fun event. It was really cool being inside. The teachers were very interactive. It was nice. My son had football practice, but due to Aries, I was able to pull up his classes and just go straight to his teachers and have an honest conversation without him being present, which is kind of cool. Football game was amazing. That scoreboard looks great. The sponsorships look really nice up there. The band played excellent. They're improving every year. And I truly appreciate the remodeling of the snack bar. We had plenty of room in there. We weren't bumping into each other and tripping. So that was awesome as well.
I went to the first football game in many, many years, so I appreciate that. It was so much fun to see the community together, the kids playing, everybody running around, buying all of that food and stuff. And thank you for the boosters for allowing me to volunteer and help out. And I encourage everybody that has an opportunity to just come out there and support. Our kids really take pride, and they were so grateful that we were there providing the service that we were, and very respectful. Thank you and pleased for everything. So I was really, really impressed. Thank you.
Corporate Faculty Association, CFA, we received your report. Presentations, update on school resource officer.
Good evening, Board President De La Fuente, members of the board, staff, and community. I want to welcome a special guest tonight. We have Chief Ochoa, and so I just want to thank her for being here. She's been an amazing addition to our community and doing some amazing work. And so I wanted her to come tonight because it's a partnership that's created with the school resource officer. And also to understand what is the current reality of Corcoran Police Department and the district, right? Because some of us only see one side and we want to make sure that we get the full picture. So with that said, if you go to the next slide, what we're gonna do real quick is we're gonna just look at clarity, current reality. What does it look like for adding additional SRO? And the closing, and really the purpose tonight is for us to give information, and we love to hear feedback from you. And then, you know, from that point, then that'll help us to determine like, what are the next steps, right? And so, next slide. The slide that you see there looking ahead is really the board priority. I'm not gonna go over this other than the first one, which is to that we're ensuring our campuses and workplaces are to be safe, welcoming, and inclusive for all. And so that's where this really rests. And so, you know, on the agenda tonight, there's you know, one for the original SRO that's there, just a continuance. But this is talking about like, what would it look like if we were to expand? So the next slide, so this is the current reality. So I'm gonna just talk real quick and then the chief will get some more information. So that is our current reality at our district. We have one safety and security coordinator, we have 4 safety supervisors, and they split the schools, right? So high school has some, and then if Bret Hart needs help, they go there, or you know, Fremont to John Muir, and then, you know, as well as Mark Twain. So that's the structure that they have, and then we have the SRO, and I'll go ahead and give it to the chief.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you all for all you do. So I wanted to make sure that we included some of the numbers of the calls for service that we have here at the schools. They're pretty high, in my opinion. But I did go back and look at the year prior. So the numbers that are up there for 2023, 2024. Obviously, there's 1,200, almost 1,300 calls for service that involves the schools. This last year, we were able to dedicate a school resource officer, Officer Flores, and she worked really well with the safety team. And so, ironically, there's a lot of contradiction about, you know, is having a school resource officer on campus really making a difference? I can tell you because she dedicated so much time to the campus, the numbers dropped in all but one school. So the year prior, Corcoran High School had 774 calls and it dropped down to 638. Kings Lake went from 33 calls to 38 calls, which there was an increase of 5. John Muir went from 267 to 251. Mark Twain went from 236 to 100 calls for service. Fremont from 131 to 123, and Bret Hart went from 215 to 157. So I think her presence alone has made a huge difference. But more importantly, I want to talk about the reason we have community service officers and our school resource officers there. If you look at the statistics in the juvenile justice in California, the Attorney General's office just came out with their last report, which was in 2023. And it shows that there is an increase in juvenile arrests by 23%. That's not okay. I believe by having an officer on campus, it is his or her job to build relationships with the students. It's their job to be mentors. So if you look on the chart, I also included the safety layers. That's because there's already one layer, which includes the staff, the students, and the parents. We're considered a second layer because we're community members. Not only are we first responders, but we're part of the safety plan. It's kind of like there's multiple layers, and it's going to take all of us to make our school safer. I was a school resource officer for many years at my former agency. I was a juvenile detective. I was a school resource officer at a high school, and I was a school resource officer for the middle school. And I'm going to tell you, it makes a huge difference. The relationships I built with those kids who were on the borderline of making bad decisions, they just needed a little mentoring. They just needed a little bit of direction, maybe a little structure that didn't exist in their homes. And that was part of my job. It wasn't just about arresting children. It was about building relationships. So I express that to our staff, and they know what my goals are, and it is to build those relationships. Next, we have communication. Well, now that we have a school resource officer that's dedicated to the school, that officer is able to communicate. It's like one way. You're not even going through dispatch. You're going straight to that officer. That officer is communicating on the radio to us, which is all recorded so that our dispatchers know what other additional resources we have. So it cuts kind of the middle person, sometimes she's able to address the problem instantly. And there's no need, other than a conversation, there's no need for a citation, there's no need for arrest or other direction. So it builds that communication between the schools, but we also have the opportunity to actually sit and listen to what the needs are and not just make assumptions, because unfortunately, our job is usually to enforce laws, and that's all we do. This is adding a new job. It's building those relationships, having the communication with all your staff and with your students and the parents. Information sharing, and relationships, those kind of go hand in hand, because we're now listening to everything that is needed. We're coming up with plans, and I spoke with the superintendent past, and that was one of the things, they're like, we want them to be at the games. So we have officers at the games. We want them to go to the open houses. We want, and I'm like, well, that's all we need to know. We just need to know that this is what you want. School resource officer sends me a calendar. She's like, we're already signed up for all these events. So that's super important. And I just want you guys to understand that all we need to know is through communication, what the needs are of each individual school. In this case, she dedicates most of her time to the high school. That's where she's contracted. But we did send temporary second SRO to the middle school, and we didn't have a single call for service for that week. So
You didn't have what?
a single call for service that week that he was assigned there. So people can say all day long that it doesn't make a difference. I know that my priorities when I was a school resource officer was the safety of the school that I was assigned to. That was my first priority. Only in very rare occasions, if there was a call of a possible active shooter, then I was leaving those campuses to go to another school or to go to another corporation or whatever. But other than that, my dedication, everybody knew that I was going straight there. Administrators all had my cell phone. Didn't matter what day it would be, whether it was on Saturday or Sunday, they knew how to get it. So I hope that you understand. I understand education is super important as well. So I know she's working on programs to help educate as well. But if you have any questions of me, please feel free to ask. I'm very passionate about our school resource officers as having been one for many years.
We were looking at a grant a few years ago for that second officer. And somehow it just didn't materialize. What's the status of your staffing and the possibility?
So there was a cost grant that's for. Okay. So we are, for the first time, I've only been here 6.5 months. But for the first time, we were fully staffed. We did have somebody recently leave. But I was in the police academy this morning already recruiting. Unfortunately, it takes about 4 months to hire an officer. Lucky we can be picky. I don't want to lower our standards. I want to make sure it's the right fit for the city. The last 2 officers that I hired are both from Portland graduates. Those are the people that I want, that their families are here and they're invested in this community. I don't want somebody that's going to use this as training grounds and go somewhere else. You know, I don't want somebody that's chasing the money. I want somebody that their heart's here. So I have 1 vacancy right now. I'm almost fully staffed. I hope to be fully staffed really soon, and that's with 2 additions. I did ask the city council for 2 additional bodies. So we went from 18 officers, we're going up to 20 officers this year, and in hopes that we can possibly get second SRO would push us to 21. But that way we can have people dedicated specifically to the school.
No. Any more questions? I'll kind of add to what Chief Ochoa had mentioned. So the one thing on the COPS grant, as she kind of said, was, you know, it's about the fully staffed, you know, consistently, right? And so that's the part that's hard because, you know, I don't know if that, you know, how often that takes place, right? They're in even any community that's our size. So really, when we spoke, and we're actually like sharing the same journey, but I think we're like 1 week apart in our jobs. And so when we both came in, we had a lot of good connections just there. But it seemed like the most beneficial way to do this would actually be to fully fund a school resource officer. So then there was an actual dedicated person versus it being, you know, dependent on a grant, right? That doesn't allow for sustainability. So that's the cost of the estimated cost of fully funding an additional SRO. It's like a little bit, some change and things in there, like, you know, it's 125, 380 or something like that. We just put the round amount. And then the SRO would be fully dedicated to the schools like the chief stated. So that's kind of where we're at right now in our findings. So just wanted to get some feedback from the board. If there was anything else, any other questions that you had?
So the COPS grant is no longer available, is that what they're saying, or?
No, I don't know if the COPS grant if it's still available, but the thing is, the caveat to the grant is that the department has to be fully staffed in order for it to actually pay for an additional person. And the problem is that you're not gonna have that fully staffed part, that's what.
So if we don't have it fully staffed, it'll cost us $125,000 plus, correct?
It would cost us the cost of that one FTE, which is a little bit over 125,000.
Okay, so then, for me, I'd like to know where we stand to see if we could, continue to fund, not just for 1 year, because I hate for us to have the funding 1 year and then we get used to that assistance and then it's gone. What other things have we looked into for providing security? I know we have the 4 staff and the 1 supervisor. Have we looked into anything else, discovering that we may not be fully staffed?
Yeah, so one of the things that, so I'll answer the two kind of separate. So one is where we're at financially. We're finishing up on the unaudited actuals that closed the books for last year. That'll give us a better idea of, you know, what that looks like for last year, but also for this year, right? And so that's one piece. The second piece of what have we done in addition to looking at a second SRO is actually what we're doing right now. So that's why we with Chief Ochoa's help, we piloted with the SRO that you saw there in the picture with the students at the middle school to see like what is the impact, right? But then also, are there other things like when our behavior is happening? Is it during lunchtime? Is it after school? Is it before school? So those are data points that we're looking at right now. And seeing what we saw is, I'll give you an example of the middle school, for example. Once Principal Whitmore and his team really like started to dig in and they did some amazing work and they're continuing to do that. Students were like, well, we can't really fight here anymore. So then what they were doing is they were going off campus and it was like happening in the park, right? So then that's different, right? So those are the things that the data points that we're looking at to see, is it, you know, the SRO, is it additional like early morning aid that, you know, is there during the mornings to have eyes on the campus? Is it additional, you know, what does that look like? Yeah, so we're in the process of doing that. And then also waiting for the unaudited actuals, because then that'll give us a really good idea. Does that, I hope that answers your question?
Yes,
Yeah, okay. Are there any other questions? Again, I want to thank Chief Ochoa, because again, she's been an amazing partner. We meet, I want to say like every 3 weeks, either on the phone, I'll text her and say, let's talk on the road when we're both coming into work. And but she's always been accessible. So again, I want to just extend, you know, our gratitude to you and your team.
Thank you. Public comment. Action items, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? A motion to approve. A second. Any discussion? Roll call, Valerie.
I,
Teresa. Aye. Sammy.
Aye.
Patty. Aye. And I.
Christina, on your trip for the air. For your training, I appreciate, number one, you bringing it back to California. Number two, does ASCA have any training locally for new superintendent?
It doesn't. This is actually the only training that they do for superintendents. And the reason being is because there's a lot, but there's not a lot for just this area. So it's a statewide only. This is the only cohort that they have.
Okay, and also I noticed that there may have been a mistake, but you're not entitled to mileage on your claim. So we need to make sure that.
Yeah, got it.
That's correct,
Yeah.
please. Thank you.
Kings County Office of Education Service for Transitional Kindergarten Professional Development.
Just if I can interject real quick, the staff is gonna try something new, so you're gonna see each staff member come up, give a quick report, and then if there's any questions, then that's.
So yes, my request is for training through KCOE for my TK teachers. Just to give you a little bit of background, TK is an evolving program. Next year will be the final year of implementation, meaning all 4-year-olds will be welcome to join us in TK. And so over the last few years, there's been lots of changes for bringing in and welcoming these younger and younger students. So part of that is partnering with KCOE to provide us with some training in some of those areas. So for example, some of the training that I've asked them to provide is how we can support our youngest English language learners, bringing science into the classroom. We have updated learning foundations. So K-12 has standards. In preschool and TK, we have what are called learning foundations. And so this year is the first year that we have updated foundations to reflect the inclusion of TK within preschool. So they're just a little bit different. So that's part of the training, is working with teachers on understanding those new foundations and how they can implement them in the classroom. And then the other piece of the training is providing them with some training on DRDP, which is an assessment tool that's used in preschool and some TK programs. It's a more developmental approach than, say, like a standard report card.
And just let the board know, oh, sorry.
I was just asking if there are any questions.
Just so board knows it. Oh, sorry.
Was this used last year?
Pardon?
The training, was that given to the staff last year, or did you get?
But
We're getting lower on the age.
yeah, it's just because we're getting lower in age. So we did have training from KCOE, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago before I started in this position, to give them training on the DRDP. And that was just 1 or 2 sessions. So this is the first time that we've had a more comprehensive kind of overarching program training, looking at all the different pieces for our little kids. Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Hi.
Teresa? Aye. Sammy?
Aye.
Patty?
Aye.
And I. Photo, video capture and streaming platform for athletics programs. Mr. Larkin?
You guys have a copy of short presentation. And good evening, by the way, I'm started. Good evening. So really to simplify this as much as possible, when I was a kid growing up, I could remember the reel-to-reels. Then it turned into the whole VHS camcorder, right? It's in 2024 now, we really want to upgrade what it is to do for our students. So I heard this kind of like analogy or phrase earlier, you know, we want to have championship teams program, right? We've got to have championship teams. And so right now we have at least one senior, if not maybe more than one, they're looking really good athletically, right? So we want to put them in a position to have the best as far as video is concerned. We want our coaches to have the best when it comes to video, statistical analysis, all the tools that come with the modernized 2024 type of system for our student athletes. So I hope that kind of describes what Huddle is, or kind of a simplified version. Are there any questions? Short and sweet for you. But we like it. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve.
I'll second. Any discussion?
I would just like to say that I did a little research on this because I thought it was real expensive. Then I found out Hanford has one. We gotta keep up with our community, you know, with what's going on. And I just think it's a good investment to make for our kids. Because a lot of, we already have several major athletes coming from corporate, and I think this is a great tool that they need.
Roll call, Valerie,
Abstain.
Teresa,
Aye.
Sammy.
Aye.
Patty.
Aye.
And I. Personnel, consider the approval of the 2024-25 annual certification for administrators assigned to evaluate instructional personnel. Mr. Pacina.
Yes, good evening, Board President De La Fuente, members of the board. This is just a formality. Each year, what we do is under Ed Code section 35160.1, certify that the governing board certifies that the following administrators are appropriately credentialed and duly qualified to evaluate instructional personnel for the 24-25 school year. So there's just a list that you have for the backup of the personnel, and then they're able to evaluate credentialed people.
Do I have a motion?
A motion?
Any discussion? Roll call, Valerie.
Aye.
Teresa.
Aye.
Sammy.
Aye.
Patty.
Aye.
And I. Consider the approval of a provisional internship permit for Marissa M. Escalante.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Roll call, Valerie.
Aye.
Teresa.
Aye.
Sammy.
Aye.
Patty.
Aye.
And I.
Sure.
I just stole her thunder, that's all I'm gonna say.
Future agenda items. We will have a special board meeting workshop to review the school services of California reports on Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. The agenda will be posted this Friday. The workshop will be held in open session.
People are doing that, are we still on that part? I know there's been some maybe concerns with the girls softball stadium at the high school. A lot of, don't get me wrong, the football field, it looks amazing, the scoreboard, a lot of compliments about that. Our baseball, boys baseball stadium, field looks great. But I think we have probably been, and it's, to me, it really hasn't been brought to my attention until recently. But I think we're really lacking on providing the fair share for the girls softball. And I'd like to see if we can, this district can do something about that so that we don't have to play at the rack, or they can play on our campus like they're supposed to, and maybe give them equal treatment as everyone.
No, definitely. I know that coming in, one of the things that I saw was that we didn't have an updated facility master plan. And that would actually be part of that. And so with the new CBO coming in, that's one of the priorities that we'll have is to do that, because we'll have, I'm hearing you about the softball, and we'll have other, competing interests as well. So we want to go through the facilities master plan, which actually works with the city as well on their growth plan. I don't know what we call it here, but the expansion of new homes and whatnot are built, those sections. So definitely want to do that. And we'll talk more about like when you would like to, and even when we can have this discussion about softball and other items that the committee does bring up as well. But here you, yes.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
One second.
Roll call, Valerie.
Aye.
Teresa.
Aye.
Sammy.
Aye.
Patty.
Aye.
And I. Meeting is adjourned at 6:44 p.m.
Yeah.
I was in long term, I just want to say